So it's perfect timing.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, okay, let me open that. Move this out of the way.
You know, this is a very cool idea that you have here.
I've been doing it for years. I used to do it in a 65 Dodge van. I started with that. It had an extended, it looks just like this one. But yeah, it is a cool idea, and it gives people, you know, you get to see a person and you relax and you talk. And
yeah.
So anyway, let me get this thing set up, Ann. All right. So how was your trip here?
It was great. I've been coming to Nantucket for all my life practically, and it's just such a wonderful spot. So it was fun.
Yeah.
Lots of involvement. A lot of people showed up at the workshop and to the presentation last night. It was great.
All right,
Went to the chamber and did that thing when I got
Yeah, that
there.
was fun. That was where I met you.
Yes.
So now you're an economic developer. Is that what I would title you as?
Right. I work for the Economic Development Council in Western Massachusetts, but I have done a lot of work professionally with communities who are interested in working on their downtowns and making them better, and how do they make them really be a community asset for everybody.
And Remain Nantucket asked you to come here.
Remain Nantucket asked me to come here. We come with my family every year, and over the last few years, I've stopped in and sort of watched and had conversations with the folks from the Dreamland Theater and with the planning department and others, because I'm just interested in Nantucket, and I love the downtown. It's just beautiful and historic and interesting, and so I'm always interested in how it's evolving over the years and how it continues to remain vital, and how it's serving the needs of the community and the visitor and the property owners and shop owners who are here.
So they asked you to come because do they believe, I mean, I think I know the answer, but I want you to tell me, do they believe that we're losing something in our downtown somewhere?
Well, I think that you know, they asked me to come because I think that the people that they work with all the time, the restaurateurs, the organizations, the retailers, the town administration, all see that downtowns are always changing, and they're evolutionary. And how do downtowns continue to be vital and to serve all the needs that they serve, and in terms of the community and the visitor. And Nantucket is a destination for many visitors over the year, for a good part of the year. You know, certainly booms in the summertime, but you know, how do you make the downtown attractive for the visitor, but also how do you make it connect to the community, and how do you continue to keep it vibrant and make it a year-round entity? And I think there is some concern or thought that maybe that's changing in a way, and how does the community and downtown businesses and property owners try to sort of manage that change and maybe even do things to improve the downtown?
How can we do that though? I mean, it's all market driven, right? That's what I don't understand. If markets drive everything, and if the market isn't there, then why do we need you?
Well, good question. I think it's not why do you need me, because I'm not the one who sort of figures it out.
Yep.
I'm sort of there to try to facilitate a conversation that helps people figure out, well, what is this role of this downtown, and what do you want it to be? And then are there ways that you can either create new things, intercede to sort of help. Let's use independent retailers as an example. You know, yeah, the rents are high, property values are high. How can we identify and support and nurture along those independent retailers to be the next generation of independent retailers who will provide that interesting shopping experience that Nantucket is known for? So maybe it's necessary to sort of intercede, to sort of see if there's a way to structure rents or to do certain things that create entrepreneurial opportunities for those types of businesses, and really having that conversation and then trying to think through, you know, how might you do that in Nantucket? And
all right.
So and it can be done. I mean, it's done elsewhere.
But don't you have to include our major landlord, Mr.
Absolutely.
Karp? Was Mr. Karp at any of these?
I don't know Mr. Karp. I don't believe he was there, but I know there were people who were there from NIR
Okay.
who were part of that came in from
Great,
Boston,
great.
and certainly
good.
the large property owners and the other large stakeholders, large and small institutional stakeholders, need to be part of that conversation. And
right.
I think everyone acknowledges that.
Instead of me asking the questions, you had a big forum yesterday
We had-
at the Athenaeum, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you had a lot of interaction between people, and they had a lot of questions.
It really was it was more an opportunity for people to talk about, well, what really works here in downtown Nantucket and what doesn't work so well. If you were going if you had ideas about what you could do to help either take advantage of some of the opportunities or to solve some of the problems, what might those ideas be?
Can you give us some of those that they came up with so that we have an idea on?
Well, first of all, people talked about the strengths of Nantucket's downtown and being a really the front door, the brand for Nantucket as a whole. There's a great appreciation of the history and architecture and culture and heritage of the island, and it's really illustrated in its downtown and how it looks, how it feels, that charm, that uniqueness. That's something that you really can't find anyplace else. That the unique shopping, the fabulous dining, the wonderful arts institutions and organizations, the new theater coming back online, the Whaling Museum, and all those kinds of cultural things that are here in downtown Nantucket are real assets and strengths. On the downside, they talked about the seasonality and how do you keep merchants, the stores open on a year-round basis, or as much as you can year-round. How do you build on the shoulder seasons? How do you do things that
How do you deal?
do that?
I have a major question I have to ask you. How do you deal with the concept of online shopping? And you must see that everywhere.
Well, I think everybody is every place and everywhere you have to include online shopping as part of your business plan, because that's important, and it's
so
and
you're
it's happening.
encouraging people that have Main Street downtown businesses to online use.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think that it's part of how people do business, but I also know from my experience in downtowns all over the place, is that people are very experiential. They want the experience and they love the experience of going in and talking to the shop owner, someone who's passionate about their product, who's knowledgeable about the product or the services that they're providing, who gives you something that's uniquely theirs. That experience can't be replaced by an online thing. But if you want cranberries after you leave the island, it's great to be able to go online and get them. That's there's nothing wrong with that. It only expands their business opportunity. It will never replace the experience of going in and talking to Mr. Young at the Young's Bike Shop or at Sweet Inspirations and talking to the owner of that, whose name I have forgotten, but
John.
But John. But buying that little whale is a wonderful thing. It's my son and we all, growing up here, we would go and sit in the back part of Black Eyed Susan's, and he would sneak out and go around the corner into Sweet Inspiration and pick out a chocolate for everybody at the table and buy it and bring it back in. You don't replace that. It's a fabulous thing. So no, you don't replace online shopping. You maybe just add to it, because it gives you an expanded market.
All right, so what other concerns did you hear from people? What other things did they say?
I think people talked a little bit about how do you make the experience of moving around and walking around or getting around the downtown a little more user-friendly. So, improvements that you might be able to see in gateways, that when you get off the boat, you got to figure out where you are and how do you get to someplace else. The possibility to maybe improve the pedestrian sidewalks in some way that is sensitive to the historic nature of the downtown, so you don't change that. You don't want to Disneyfy downtown.
So that means keep the cars on Main Street.
Keep the cars on Main Street.
Shopping malls.
Don't make it a walking shopping mall. That really actually didn't come up at all about making it a pedestrian mall.
Did keeping government buildings downtown come up?
keeping the activity of government downtown
Yeah.
did come up.
Oh, it did.
And certainly, sometimes when you move where meetings take place, it has an unanticipated or a negative impact on some because there are fewer people who are coming down there. Every little thing that you add or every little thing that you take away can have an impact on the economic vibrancy of a downtown area. And some of the other things around infrastructure, sort of looking at wayfaring and how do you direct people around. The very interesting thing I think that came up in the presentation talked about how do you expand or how do you communicate the Nantucket brand? And because Nantucket does have a brand, and there are resources within the community with writers and people experienced with marine life and bird activity and artists and photographers and thought leaders who could maybe you tap into some of those resources and make additional offerings that would happen throughout the year that people could either as visitors come and take part in those sorts of things, like a week studying with a writer,
You're talking mostly shoulder and off season.
Could be any time of the year, but mostly
'Cause that
shoulder
seems
and
to be
off season, not necessarily in season, but also using those opportunities to connect with the community, and so those things could also and be available to the community. The other thing was the other really big thing, and we're at the airport, but I wanted to get this
Sure,
in.
yeah, get
is
it.
that
We'll pull over.
is that people talked about using the downtown as the community stage, using using it as a platform for community events, and they frequently mentioned the Halloween parade and when the football team came home and when the community came together, the tailgate parties, those kinds of things, that the iconic events like Daffodil Days and the Stroll, but in addition to those kinds of things that are more visitor oriented and for the community, but using the downtown as a stage for other kinds of activities,
Right. Now,
so that's those were basically the high points.
Now, do you submit something to Remain? Do you write out something, or do we get a final?
Yeah, I'm
my thoughts. And,
well, what I plan to do, I just left a meeting there, is to create just a memo that would sort of summarize what people have said and sort of our recommended next steps of how do you kind of keep this process moving forward. And I think that it might be, we talked about somebody has to own that responsibility of trying to herd the cats, to come up with a strategic plan.
Remain seems to be excited about doing that.
Well, I think that the ownership it's more of who's the identifying a quarterback to sort of keep pushing forward, and that might be a new person who acts in that role, or it might be but it's really a collaborative effort, because it's one of the things that people mentioned a lot was that there's a lot of great activity and organizations are doing wonderful things. The Restaurant Association, you've got things that are happening with the Chamber, the Historic Society, lots of different cultural organizations, and sometimes those things happen in a silo, and being able to communicate and sort of figure out what really is going on, where are the holes, where can we do it better, how do we leverage the resources and the program that's already here, and how do we kind of work together towards a common mission, which is really trying to make the downtown both be take advantage of the assets and the opportunity that the visitors have to bring to the island, but also taking advantage of how do you use the downtown for the community, and creating gathering places.
Well, I think once Dreamland gets
and that
open,
will certainly
and if
help.
it's a year-round place, and if it's possible, and this is a market-driven thing, if the rents are not as high, then that maybe people will keep their shops open longer. There'll be more life happening. I mean, for really, 8-9 months out of the year, that place it's been dying slowly.
Well, see,
I've noticed it just, it really comes down to the price of keeping your store open. A lot of stores now close because they don't think it's worth staying open anymore.
Well, I think that people acknowledge that that's a challenge, and some of the ideas that came out in the workshop, and also things that people talked offline about, were how do you try to intercede and maybe try to either it's a combination of things, either bringing more people or doing more things that bring more people down there to make it worth the business of staying open.
Yeah.
So that has to happen.
Yep.
And also the idea of is there a way to impact the affordability of some of those spaces, at least off when the season isn't as high.
Let me ask you this: in all the towns that you go and see, and does anything compare to what we're going through?
Well, I think anybody with a huge influx of seasonality, and where you have really desirable real estate, that you see those kinds of stresses and challenges. And some people some towns have tried different things to improve that, because I think everybody's goal is to not have downtown Nantucket be a ghost town in the winter,
right.
and really make it, and what can you do to make it so that it's
and also not
it's important to the
Disneyfy
community,
it, like
and
you
not
said.
Disneyfy it, because it has to. Successful downtowns have to be real,
Yeah,
and they have
right.
to be authentic.
Absolutely.
So you try to make something that's not authentic happen, and then it becomes Epcot Center, and that's not what you want to see, and that's not what anybody wants to see.
That's not Nantucket for sure.
And that's not Nantucket,
No,
and that
never has been.
Never has
the
been.
one thing about this place is, I've been here since the mid '80s, and there's been changes, but it's still Nantucket. It's still the same place that it was in many ways, really at its core.
Gene, that is a great comment, because one of the things that really resonated with me was a gentleman at the workshop yesterday said that the thing that was most important to remember in all of this, and also one of the things that was the strongest assets, is that the heart and the soul of this island is a downtown, and that to preserve, but not in a museum kind of way, but to retain that history and heritage and be able to pass it on to future generations is really important. So downtowns everywhere change, and they evolve, and businesses come and go, and sort of things happen, but that soul, that heart, that spirit of the downtown is that keeping that, and they're fragile. Downtowns can be very fragile, so being mindful of the fragility of little downtowns, particularly really unique, historic and interesting downtowns, is important to be in everyone's thinking. But there are lots of ideas about how do you tackle these things, and I used in the presentation this quote by Jane Jacobs that talked about the downtowns or cities that really work are cities that are I'm paraphrasing, but are formed by the community and for the community, but the community has lots of users and lots of stakeholders. So don't hate the visitor. They're an important part of this island's economy, but taking advantage of that opportunity that the visitor represents and expanding that opportunity, but also making sure that downtown is real for people who live here. And that's
pretty hard to do, though, when your landlord owns a majority of the downtown.
Well, actually, the ownership of the downtown is pretty diverse. I mean, there's
Is it?
Yeah, it truly is. I mean, there are.
We had one pretty much.
You have a couple of large landowners,
Yeah.
but if you really look at every single parcel and every single building, there's a lot of different owners in the downtown,
Yeah,
including the
there are.
large
There's a few.
landowners.
Yeah,
Everyone has to be engaged, including the large
exactly.
landowners. But it's not the landowners driving it
I understand.
either, because it's both. I mean, it's
Exactly.
large and small, and the cultural institutions, the support from the town,
Sure.
and the administration,
It
the select board.
It won't do his business any good if nobody's down there.
Exactly.
So
if
absolutely.
you can't be open for business if there's no business
Exactly.
there. So that's great. But it's been a great trip. I love Nantucket. It's always really fun,
Great.
and I feel like I've made a lot of new friends.
Well, you made one
Don't
here.
you?
You got it. And thank
Thanks
you.
for the lift.
You got it.
I love this thing. This is great.